Alrighty, everybody, it is currently Wednesday, August 27th, 2025, and I'm coming at you live from Neverland Ranch. Because today we're talking about Michael Jackson, MJ. This is the first major black conspiracy theory we've done. I dipped my toes a little bit into the world of like Dr. Sebi and using herbs to heal AIDS or whatever. You know, I dipped my toes into the world of eating rosemary to cure leukemia, and I checked that out a little bit. But today's episode it's definitely a major black conspiracy theory. I wouldn't say it goes. It's not as black as like Tupac or like the Black Israelites or whatever, but it's a little black. You know what I mean? It's like Michael Jackson himself. It's like some people consider it black, some people don't. You know, our boy MJ. So some people definitely towards the end they were like, look at that honky. Some people were like, no, he's still black. Even he was like, no, I'm still black. Which, yeah, that was probably pretty fun sometimes. I don't imagine there were a lot of people back then who didn't know who Michael Jackson was, but I imagine there had to have been a few. And I do imagine an encounter where Michael Jackson says the N-word, you know what I mean? He's talking and he goes, I told that bitch ass to shut up. And someone looks at him, in his voice. I heard he had a really deep voice. I've heard all types of shit about Michael Jackson. We're going over multiple theories today, but I heard he had like an actually like super deep voice. So it's hey, man. So like when he did the public appearances, he talked like, hi, it's me, Michael. How's everybody doing? He talked like that, but like in reality, he had like a deep voice, and I assume he also had a bit of a black voice. You know what I mean? Hey, it's me, Michael. What the fuck is going on back here? Hey, where my chip at? Yo, I need my chip right now. So I imagine that's how Michael Jackson talked in reality, but I also like to think there was just someone out there, some like random person who like some old person, right? Who was like 90 years old in the 1980s who had no idea who Michael Jackson was or whenever he turned white. I don't really know when that happened. Or like I think it was like the early 2000s, maybe like the 90s, somewhere around there. But just some old ass motherfucker who didn't know what Michael Jackson was, that he was actually like a black dude with vitiligo. And he heard Michael Jackson say the N-word and he was like, we're allowed to say it again, dude? Let's fucking, you know? Hearing a white guy say the N-word and no one giving a fuck and being like, we're back? We're allowed to say it anymore? But no, it's Michael Jackson. He's black beneath all that. And we're going to be talking about a multitude of conspiracy theories regarding Michael Jackson. We're going to talk about, all the plastic surgery that he got a little bit. I'm not going to be going too deeply into that. We're going to be talking about maybe some involvement with God's chosen people. God's chosen people, they seem to have their grubby little paws in a whole lot of these situations. It's odd, is all I'm saying. I'm not saying, that the man with the small mustache was correct, but I am saying God's chosen people, uh, they seem to be everywhere, you know. They seem to be it's all they're all very closely related to major events that happen globally, despite the fact that they're an incredibly small portion of the population, you know. It would be like if the Uyghurs in China were like connected to 9/11. You'd be like, what the fuck? But because it's God's chosen people, we're not allowed to talk about it as much. I don't know. But they are involved in this a little bit. And a lot of that stuff, a lot of the stuff regarding God's chosen people and Michael Jackson, it's coming off the top of my head. Really, the only thing that I have like in front of me right now in terms of evidence written down is the stuff talking about his fake death theory. Just because I've never been into the whole this guy faked his death theory, you know. I I, I could maybe understand why Michael Jackson would do it and like Jeffrey Epstein, but like some of this like Tupac faked his death. Why? What? Tupac. There was no reason for Tupac to fake his death. That's one of the big ones, you know. No one's saying Biggie faked his death either, by the way, and that's probably because if Biggie faked his death, he would be pretty easy to find. You know what I mean? That's a large, very apparent individual, you know. You could send Tupac over to like Kenya or something like that, and he might fit in. You send Biggie over to Tupac, they're gonna start worshiping him like a god. Or send Biggie over to Kenya instead of Tupac, they're gonna start worshiping him like a god, dude. Just a big old meteor right in the middle of fucking Kenya. So I've never really been too deeply into the faking of the death conspiracy theories and like this motherfucker's in Cuba with Sasquatch or whatever. Never really and it's like so what? The guy faked his death. Now Tupac is like behind the marionette pulling all the strings and stuff. I don't know. I was never a big fan of it. Although Michael Jackson, I can understand why that guy would want to fake his death. Because that guy was so fucking famous, man. He was the most famous. You know, the two most famous people of like the 80s and 90s were Michael Jordan and Michael Jackson. You know, and Michael Jordan, that guy was just like, he didn't give a fuck, you know, about really anything other than basketball. But, and so I think he was like fine with the fame. You know, like Michael Jordan was complete, just a pure psychopath. That's what Michael Jordan was. He didn't give a fuck that, you know, people were surrounding his hotel or whatever. He was just locked the fuck in on winning basketball games, which that might be like a treatment for psychopaths because Michael Jordan is clearly a psychopath. So if someone gets diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, like whatever they call psychopathy nowadays, maybe get that dude involved in basketball, right? Maybe that's what Michael Jordan needs to do in his retirement is teach other psychopaths how to, instead of like murdering people or like poisoning rivers in Africa so that you can make as much money as possible, get into basketball. You know, I think that's what Michael Jordan needs to do in his retirement. But Michael Jackson, he was the other most famous person of the 80s and 90s, and I don't think he was a psychopath. I think there was some stuff wrong with him, maybe mentally, but I don't think he was a psychopath like Michael Jordan was. And so I think the fame might have, you know, got to him and affected him more as a person, and maybe that could explain why he faked his death, but I doubt it, man. You know, Michael Jackson, he had so much money, he didn't need to fake his death. He could just be like, yeah, I have so much money that I can move literally anywhere in the world and build like a skyscraper. So I don't have to see anyone again. There was no reason for him to do that. You know, all that work, all that bullshit, you know, and then if you fake your death, you can never come back from that. But if Michael Jackson went to like Tibet or something and built, you know, a giant house on top of a mountain somewhere, he could come back to the music industry, make a couple shekels, and then go right back up to his little, you know, mountain house. So I really don't think that there was any reason for him to fake his death. So we're not going to talk about that one too much. And I'm also just not into that one like that. You know, I'm into some other stuff, you know, like I said, especially the stuff regarding our good and holy Lord's favorite people on this planet. Those those guys. Um, so I am into that stuff, but the whole faking your death, and it's also like I think it's like pretty easy to do. You know, you just have to have like one guy who will like sign the death certificate and like kind of cover your face at the morgue or whatever, and then you're done. You faked your death. So there's not as much of like a conspiracy behind it because it's like you give two people like $1 million and you could fake your death, right? It's not like a super tall task. Whereas some of these other things are they require many people and like these, you know, big global connections and stuff like that. So I find those to be more interesting than like faking your death. I feel like I could, if you give me $100,000 right now, I could very easily fake my death. I don't think it would be difficult at all. You know, and I got some ideas about how I would do it. All right, number one is obviously boats. You know, you give me $100,000 to fake my death, I'm getting in a boat ASAFP, and then I'm gonna hire another boat to pick me up out of my boat, and then I'm just gonna kind of let my boat drift into the sea, and then it's like I guess he fell in, right? Like that's a really good one that you can do. Very solid plan. You know, it's a whole lot easier than, you know, the theory regarding Michael Jackson's death, right? Like they said Michael Jackson faked his death by like faking an overdose on these drugs, but then they brought his body to the hospital, so he had to have a fake body to go to the hospital. No, 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 no. My plan wouldn't need any of that shit. I got one dude with one boat, me in one boat, and it's a very simple process, you know. If I had to kill someone, that would also be the process. And I wouldn't even have to switch boats. You know, I just maybe I'd switch boats just to be safe, you know, or if I had to kill someone, I think, you know, on like a mob style hit, I'd send that dude out in a boat just to be like, "Hey man, go out in this boat somewhere. Don't tell anyone you're meeting me here, right? Because we're in the mob. Maybe he thinks there's some mob shit going on. So I'm gonna be like, hey, don't tell anyone you're meeting me here. I pull up in the other boat, get out of my boat, go to meet him on his boat, be like, hey, let's go look over the deck, shoot him, dump him overboard, rib a damn damn, bit a bam bam. The problem solved. So, and I don't think Michael Jackson's like stupid enough to not realize the boat plan, dude. The boat plan is the ultimate plan for faking your death or for killing another person. Really, if you want to do anything that you don't want people to know about, do it on a boat, right? For a number of reasons. There's like the international waters or whatever, maritime law, all that bullshit, which no one understands, right? There's like specialized lawyers just for like water law. There's there's specialized lawyers who just look at the ocean and go, the ocean's speaking to me. She's telling me her laws of the sea. So no one understands water law. So that's one reason why doing crime on a boat is it's probably the best place to do it. And the other reason is no one's around, dude. It's not and no one's gonna pull up, right? Like a little kid isn't gonna ride by on his bike if you're in the middle of the ocean. But if you're doing that shit in like New York City or whatever, you a little kid might pull up with his big wheel and be like, "What are you guys doing? Are you guys playing a game?" And it's just you and a few guys beating another guy to death with a baseball bat, and you have to be like, "Yeah, we're playing a game. Now get the fuck out of here." So if you're gonna commit a crime, do it on a boat. Important lesson in there. And you know, boats aren't like cars either. Like every car has its own like special VIN number and nice license plate and all that bullshit, dude. I know boats have like they do have something similar to that, but you could also be like, dude, I don't fucking know. You need a license plate for a boat, dude. Not my problem, right? Like no one, there's not cops cruising down the fucking street pulling you over because your boat doesn't have like the correct. I don't remember what it's called, but like the stickers on the side of the boat that denote what the boat is. Just like peel that bitch off real quick. You're not gonna get fucking pulled over for that. So once again, or just put it on there with magnets. Even better idea, dude. Like on the side of the boat, it's supposed to be like stuck on or painted on or whatever. Just like, but if you put them on with magnets and you can just slide them off real quick, rearrange them, no one knows what the fuck is going on, dude. Boats are the ultimate for crime. You know, maybe that's why those people up in the Northeast, like those rich white people up in the Northeast, are able to get away with all like their weird occult shit, is because they're probably doing it on boats. It's probably not like an eyes wide shut thing where you pull up to a mansion in the middle of the woods. They're probably not. Why the fuck would they do it there, dude? You know, people go into the woods all the time for like various reasons. It's like, if like a group of 16-year-old kids wanted to smoke weed and they like went into the woods and discovered like your secret, you know, child sacrifice cult, you'd be like, you know, that's a shitty situation to be in. And it's like, especially if they hit a, you know, a Shaggy and Scooby, you know, fucking Scooby-Doo run and just skedaddle away before you can even see them, you're in a shit situation. So it's like, why not do it on a boat? So maybe that's why motherfuckers ain't getting caught doing this shit, dude. You know? And this goes back to Epstein a little bit, where it's like, I mean, these people know. They have to know that the boat is better for doing it, right? So it's like, why would you have an island full of kids when you could have a boat full of kids, dude? I don't think we got to the bottom of the Epstein shit at all. I know a lot of people do. They think he was like the only pedophile in the world. Like people seriously think shit that's like basically that. There are people that are like, they got Epstein. It can't be going on anymore. It's like there can't be more than one pedophile on the planet at a single time. Are they the fucking Sith Lords or whatever from Star Wars, right? Where it's like there can only be two Siths at one time, dude. That's not how pedophile. There can be infinity pedophiles. So it's like. There's definitely other ones, and they're probably doing it on boats, man. Think about it. They're probably, why wouldn't you do it on a boat? If I had to do anything, anything illegal or anything I didn't want anyone to know about, I'd be doing it on a boat, bitch. you know? And if anyone asked what you were doing out there, be like, fucking, stays between me and the ocean. That's my true lover. Boom. Now no one's fucking questioning you about shit, and you're on a boat rolling around, you know, doing whatever it is you want to do. I'm trying to think of what I would be doing because I wouldn't be, being a pedophile. Not me. I'm not personally a big fan of that, but maybe you guys are. I think you guys maybe might be. I'm not. So I wouldn't be doing that. Hookers and cocaine, I mean, maybe. I I don't know, but if I was to do something along those lines, I'd be doing it on a boat, or maybe it's just like listening to like gay music or watching gay movies. Like I really like the movie The Green Book. If you've never seen it, it's the one with Viggo Mortensen and Mahershala Ali, where he Viggo Mortensen's kind of like this Italian racist driver from New York, and he's driving around Mahershala Ali, who's like this gay black dude, and it's in the 60s, and like they're driving through the South and all that stuff. So, and it came out in 2018. So it's like one of those movies. It's one of those movies that came out between like 2018 or even before that, really. Maybe like I'm trying to think. It's probably like 2013 when the first movies like that, even earlier. I watched recently, what the fuck was it called? It was with Matthew McConaughey and Sandra Bullock and Samuel L. Jackson, but it was like another one of those white savior movies. But they really started ramping up around, 2015, 2016, like that time frame. And this was one of those movies, where it was like a white dude and a black dude getting along to like learn about shit or whatever. And I like that movie, dude. Yeah, it's dumb and it's corny, and even I cringed at it while I was watching it, but I fucking like that movie. All right, I find it to be an enjoyable viewing experience. I'm sorry, dude. Sue me. Mahershala Ali's a good actor, so is Viggo Mortensen. It's a pretty decent fucking movie. There is some of that corny bullshit in there where it's like, you don't fucking, I'm not white enough, I'm not black enough, what am I? There is some of that corny bullshit in there, but I don't know. From time to time, I enjoy watching that shit. So if I wanted to like watch that movie again and I had $1 billion, I would be watching that movie on a boat somewhere. You know what I mean? And then I'd have the entire crew of the boat killed so that no one knows I was watching uh The Green Book. That's what I would be doing. I'd be doing it on a boat, right? If I had to fake my death, I'd be doing it on a boat. I'm on a motherfucking boat, bitch. I'm a pirate. That's how I'd be operating. So I think every time you hear about one of these, Epstein's Island or like whatever else it is, I don't think that's the real shit. I think maybe it might be the real shit, but it's not all the shit. You know what I mean? Like Epstein's Island wasn't the only, you know, meeting area for all these pedophile elites to be in. I think there was other things like that. I think there still are things like that, and they're probably on boats because you can just move that bitch around, dude. It's like, you know, if someone's like, "Hey, I saw someone like transporting kids onto an island somewhere," you can't move the island when the police go to investigate it and the police be like, there's not a fucking island here. You can't do that. But you can do that with a boat, is what I'm saying. A boat's mobile. You can get it really out there in the middle of nowhere, right? Like even Epstein's Island, it was close to a lot of other islands, and it was part of the U.S. Virgin Islands, so it wasn't too close to Florida, but it was like decently close to Florida. You get a boat going though, you could take that bitch out to the middle of fucking Pacific Ocean. And you could get the boat out to the middle of the Pacific Ocean and just like chill out there with your kid. So I just think, you know, a lot of people, and same with like the Comet ping pong, which that's Pizzagate stuff, if you don't know what I'm talking about there. Uh, why would they do it in like the basement of like of a pizza shop? Why wouldn't they do it on a boat? Right? Because I'm pretty sure, and maybe they wouldn't do it on a boat because like they don't have the time, right? Like the president's time can't be unaccounted for like that, right? Where it's like he was just randomly gone for 3 days. So maybe that's why they were doing it in the basement of Comet Ping Pong instead of doing it on a boat. But like I'm pretty sure DC you can get out of DC to the ocean on a boat. I'm like 70% sure about that stuff. So, or they're just too lazy, dude. They don't want to be hiring seamen to work for them. But yeah. I just be doing on a boat is all I'm saying. And there's one other thing I wanted to talk about, which is, and this had me crying laughing earlier today. So I recently downloaded the game Cyberpunk 2077, which I played it so far. It's pretty fun. It's a little bit, it does have a little bit of like that Cocoa Melon feeling where it's like, you know how they say if you show your kids Cocoa Melon, it like, there's so many bright colors and sounds and stuff like that that it completely fries their brain. It does have a bit of that, but like not fully. It did fry my brain a little bit, but that's not what I want to talk about. So it's like Skyrim. You know how like you start playing Skyrim and before you start playing the game, you get to like customize your character. Cyberpunk 2077 has that. And so you get to choose if you're like a dude or a chick or whatever, and then you go through and you're like, what kind of eyebrows do I want? What kind of like beard do I want? You know, do I want piercings or tattoos or whatever? And you go through and you decide that, dude. And at the very bottom of the character like customization menu is genitals. And like I obviously I'm a gooner, but I'm not that hardcore of a gooner, so I chose a dude and I was like, I have to, I just have to check it out, right? And so you go through it, and there's three different penis sizes. There's small, regular, and then big. And I do really have to thank the creators of Cyberpunk 2077 for making the average penis size like actually, and it like when it was like the average one, I was like, fuck, dude, because I think it goes small, average, large when you're like scrolling through it, right? And so I was like, do I even want to see what they think is average? Like how much smaller is my dick gonna be compared to like what nerds think is the average penis size, right? Because nerds, I feel like nerds, they kind of have a dick dichotomy where it's like they're either like fat, disgusting slobs whose penises are barely visible or like barely not even absorbed by fat, or they have like they're like lanky, skinny dudes with just gigantic hogs. So I was like, fuck, dude, which is it gonna be? Do nerds have small dicks or do they have big dicks? Turns out they have pretty average dicks, right? Like when I went to the average size one, comparable. That's all. That's how I'll end that statement. I would say comparable, and that was a breath of fresh air. But then I kept scrolling through, and dude, you can give your dude character a full-on vagina. And I was just, dude, and you can customize the pubic hair, like the pubes. You can like, there's designs on it. You can't do a swastika. I tried. I tried to see if they had a swastika for the pubes for my dude's mangina. They don't, but they do have. You can make a dude character in the game and give him like a full on, like a good front butt vagina, dude. Like a really, you know, I don't know if this is true for other dudes, but like if I see like a disembodied vagina, it's like, yeah, that's like nice. I enjoy looking at it, but it's nothing special for me. The vagina you could put on your like male character in Cyberpunk 2077 is like beautiful. It's literally like the most beautifully like feminine. It's like plum. It's it's one of the funniest things, dude. I'm like snot is coming out of my nose. I'm laughing. So it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen before. It's literally Buck Angel, dude. If you've never seen my boy Buck Angel before, I've talked about him several times. But yeah, that's literally what it's like. It's like a jacked dude, and then like this perfectly like plump, beautiful pussy. And then of course, dude, I had to go to check to see if you can give the chick a hog. You can. You can give your female character like an 8-inch soft dick in Cyberpunk 2077. And that to me, I was like, I've really only played like an hour of it. Maybe I spent of the hour that I played it, I spent at least half of that time laughing at my male character's vagina. Sorry. I literally have to wipe my nose. My body's like secreting fluids. It's laughing so hard. But yeah, it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my entire life. Because I feel like I heard about that, right? That was like one of like the selling point of the game to like sell it to nerds is like you you can like play as a chick and like give her a pussy, right? Like that was like why all those nerds including me, were like hyped about it, right? I didn't even buy the game when it came out. I only got it now because it was free with the PlayStation Plus like extra or whatever, whichever one I have. I don't know, I got it for Christmas, but whichever one I have, it's free with that. And so I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna play it. And at this point, I had like forgotten that you could like customize like your character's clit or whatever. And I had forgotten about that key detail about this game. And I was the it's so funny because it's like this jacked dude, and it's like a dude who's like covered in scars and stuff like that. And you can also give him no nipples. You can customize your character's nipples in the game, which I don't think you can give him nipple piercings. Maybe there's an upgrade for nipple piercings in the game, but you can give your dude no nipples in a vagina. It's it's like this jacked like Mad Max dude with like scars all over his body. And then he just has like this beautiful fucking pussy. It's or you could like make your chick character like this like Megan Fox, like just beautiful fucking, divinely feminine Aphrodite of a woman, and then just give her like an 8-inch uncircumcised hog. I was like on the floor laughing. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my entire life. It really made my day. Like after I laughed at that, it had drained so much energy out of my body that I was like, all right, I gotta go back to sleep, man. I gotta take a nap right now. Like that's how hard I was laughing at the pussy on the jacked dude from Cyberpunk 2077. It's literally, it looks like, I'm trying to think, it looks like Leo in The Revenant, if you've ever seen that movie before. Like after he gets attacked by the bear and he has like all those scars on his body and shit. That's what this dude looks like, but just with this, I mean, like I said, I'm not offended. I'm not angry by seeing like just a vagina. It doesn't make or break my day, is what I'm saying. More times than not, I'm like, hey, that's something nice to look at, right? But this is just like literally carved by the hands of Michelangelo into a piece of fucking marble from Italy. Like that's what this fucking pussy looks like. It's so funny. I was like, and there's a lot of nudity too in the game. There's like the first mission, or like the first real mission in the cyberpunk city that you go on, is you get like this dead, or not dead chick. She's like in a coma or some shit. Like she got like fucked up, and you have to pull her body out of this bathtub, and she's also naked and also very hot. So yeah, just everything about that game is so funny. It's like the Gooner nerds fantasy where it's just like it's naked chicks everywhere and you're like a hot jacked dude and you run around with guns and stuff and you dress like you're in like anime or whatever. It's the nerd's dream and it's fun. It is a fun game, or it has been so far. So I'm not complaining too much about it, but it is, I mean, it's just like the peak of geek, dude. It's peak geek shit. So yeah, that's also what I wanted to talk about in this episode, is the dude vagina in Cyberpunk 2077. You cannot understand how hard I was laughing, like scrolling through the pube options for the male character with a vagina in Cyberpunk 2077. One of the funniest, no nipples too. It was hilarious. And then, like I said, I went over to see if I could give a chick a hog. There's no ball customization, by the way, which I don't feel properly represented. Hey, you represented trans people by letting me give a dude a vagina, but you're not representing dudes with giant balls and small dicks by letting me characterize or customize the size of the balls. I'm a little bit upset by that. I'm a little bit upset that my people are not getting proper representation in this video game. But you go over to the chick customization, and obviously you can give her gigantic tits. You can, or not like gigantic, right? They're not like overly large. I wouldn't even say like Sydney Sweeney size, but you can give her pretty big tits. Dude. And I forgot about the funniest part. The funniest part, definitely not funnier than dude vagina slash chick hog. That shit was hilarious. But the other funniest part is, like I said, you the first mission in the city, you pull up to like get this chick out of this bathtub to like save her for like this corporation or whatever. I don't know. I think her organs were getting harvested or something like that, but you pull her out of the bathtub and you like carry her body out onto the porch to like deliver it to the ambulance. Dude, and as you're carrying her, her tits jiggle, but like in the most unnatural way possible. So these nerds, they didn't, maybe the computer can't like handle the jiggle physics yet, or maybe they didn't know the programming on how to do it, because there is allegedly jiggle physics in GTA 6. So maybe Cyberpunk 2077, they just didn't have like the technological capabilities to give proper tit jiggle physics, but they were jiggling so unnaturally. And it was just, I imagine this nerd with his hard, tiny dick under the desk, just like programming with one hand, just being like, make it jiggle. I want to see your boobs jiggle, just gooning underneath the fucking desk. So, God, just one of the funniest introductions to a game I've ever had in my entire life. And I don't think it's supposed to be a super serious game either. I literally think it's just for like nerds to live out their fantasies. And hey, I'm kind of included on that list. You know what I mean? I think the universe that it's set in is pretty sick in that like it's just a fun game, pretty sick game overall. So I'm not shitting too much on the nerds, kind of in the same camp as them, but it was just so funny, dude. Just this perfect, immaculate front butt. Dude, I wish you could characterize it to the level where you could like give your dude a mangina, but then also give him like a giant pair of balls. One of the greatest games I've ever, the greatest introduction to a game I've ever had in my life. And so far, this has been an introduction into some Michael Jackson conspiracy theories. I'm trying to keep this episode about an hour long. I've been going, an hour and a half every episode lately, so I'm trying to keep this one an hour long for no reason really. It's just I thought I don't know, just an hour and a half is, or some of them most of them have been even more than an hour. So I'm trying to keep them an hour long just to get back to form for the school year. Because during school, I'm only going to be able to record probably like two 1 hour episodes a week. So I'm going to try to keep this one to 1 hour long just to get it right back in there. So let's see what's going on with Michael Jackson's death. So apparently Michael Jackson died when he was 50 years old, which I didn't know he was that old. Like you look up Michael Jackson, and granted he got so much plastic surgery that he doesn't really even look like a human anymore, but he doesn't look that old, you know? And that's probably because he like bleached his skin and got like every single bone in his place replaced or bone in his face replaced with like silicone or whatever. So he didn't really look old or young or white. Like that's when people say Michael Jackson looked white. No, he didn't. Michael Jackson didn't have an ounce of like he didn't look white at all. And the main thing was the nose, right? No white person actually has a nose like that. He went too far with the nose. I think if sorry, speaking of noses, I had to wipe mine real quick, sorry, but I do think if Michael Jackson went less extreme with the nose, he would have looked more white. He might have actually convinced a few people because you got to remember this is like pre-internet times when he became white. So Michael Jackson might have actually been able to convince some people that he was actually a white dude if he didn't go so hard on the nose, dude. He went way too hard on the nose. Especially, and I get that it's tough, right? I get that it's tough to like make a black person's nose look more like a white person's nose just because of like black people have like flatter noses and then white people tend to have like the nose or like the bone part of the nose like sticks out more. So I get that that's like difficult, but it's like Michael Jackson had like $1 billion, dude. You could have figured something out. You know what I mean? You could have carved a little piece of wood and then put it in his face to make him look more white. Give him a little bit more of a natural honky nose without making it look, fully Jewish. Because that's the other part of the concern. And that's, what we're going to talk about coming up a little bit after we talk about the death conspiracy theory. Uh, my MJ was not a big fan of the boys. He did not agree with them on a lot of things. He really didn't like them at all. So He obviously didn't want to look too Jewish, which is probably why he kept the nose like that. Like he was like, I swear to God, if you make me look like a fucking Jew, I'm gonna feed you to my tigers. And I'm pretty sure he did have tigers. He had like giraffes and shit like that, dude. Michael Jackson, he was like the original like Saudi Arabian prince, right? That's what Michael Jackson was. He was very opulent, very flashy. He drove fancy shit all over the place, and he loved having just animals that you shouldn't, that you can't even enjoy as a pet, dude. You cannot enjoy having a giraffe as a pet. I'm sure it's really cool to look at, and maybe that's what Michael Jackson wanted, right? Because he obviously couldn't go to the zoo and shit like that, so he kind of had to bring the zoo to him. But like a giraffe isn't an enjoyable pet, dude. Or really any herbivore like that. Like sheep, I grew up like on a sheep farm, right? I know they're not enjoyable. Maybe giraffes are smarter than sheep. They probably are. Sheep are the dumbest animals on earth. So giraffes probably are a little bit smarter, but they're not like dog level smart. So I don't really see the appeal of having a pet giraffe, but fucking Michael Jackson did it, and I'm sure there's like a Qatari prince out there that also has a pet giraffe. But fuck, we got to talk about Michael Jackson. Got to keep this thing under an hour. So they the main reasons people believe that he faked his death was to escape fame, financial troubles, or public scrutiny. Uh, and this is, I'll look up when the allegations came out against Michael Jackson, but I think that that's like the main thing they're referring to when they talk about public scrutiny is people like calling him a pedophile, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. And fuck it, I'll just talk about it right now. So this is, I don't, once again, don't remember exact names, but Michael Jackson was accused of uh, molesting a kid who came to live with him at Neverland Ranch for a short while. And this is a big thing that I want to talk about as I'm learning more and more about Michael Jackson. So, a lot of people criticize Michael Jackson for being like, hey, he let the kids stay in his room. And you imagine like my bedroom. Like my bedroom is pretty small. I could like jump the width of my bedroom. It's not a very big room at all. But Michael Jackson's bedroom, it wasn't even like my parents' bedroom. My parents live in the master bedroom. It's a pretty big room. His wasn't even that big. Michael Jackson's bedroom was like 2 stories tall. It was literally a house. And it's still weird, right? It's still weird to like invite little kids that you aren't related to like stay in your house. But it's like it's not as weird as people think it is, right? It's not like Michael Jackson had like a twin size mattress and then a dresser in like a dorm sized bedroom. That's not what he had. His bedroom was literally gigantic, right? Especially at Neverland Ranch. So you might be thinking he was like sleeping in bed with the kids and stuff like that. He wasn't, man. It was a very, very big bedroom that they might have not been even sleeping in the first place. So yeah, and the allegations came out in 1993. And the person who first accused him of this, his father's name was Evan Chandler. And Evan Chandler, I'm pretty sure this is the guy. I could be I could be wrong about this. But one of the first people to accuse Michael Jackson of molesting them, or one of the first parents of the people, were they were very seedy individuals, right? And not like this guy, Evan Chandler, whose son kind of accused Michael Jackson of sexually abusing him. He is Jewish, and that's not what like, seriously, I know I make a whole ton of jokes. That's not what I'm referring to in this specific instance. It's this guy, he was trying to be a successful dude in Hollywood, and he just couldn't make it, right? This dude, Evan Chandler. It says he wanted to be a screenwriter, maybe. Uh, I can't remember exactly. I think he also wanted to be an actor too, but he wanted to be very successful in Hollywood. And the the theory, the belief that some people have is that this guy, Evan Chandler, basically coached his son into saying that Michael Jackson molested them, right? And this is kind of similar to the Woody Allen incident where I think it was Woody Allen, I can't remember exactly, but Woody Allen said that his ex-wife, I think it was Mia Farrow, I don't fucking remember, but he said that his ex-wife basically accused or his ex-wife accused his ex-wife coached his daughter into saying that his father molested him. So yeah, it's very there's a lot of stuff like that going around Hollywood. Yeah, it was Mia Farrow and Woody Allen, but and to be fair, yeah, I think it was Mia Farrow and Woody Allen. Who the fuck? Ronan Farrow. Let's look up. Yeah, so it was Woody Allen. Sorry, just had to get the story straight there real quick. And the thing about Woody Allen is you didn't have to accuse him of anything. Like that's Woody Allen married his stepdaughter that he raised since she was like 3 years old. You don't have to accuse Woody Allen of anything to make him look like a bad person. This lady Mia Farrow was literally just insane. And people have similar beliefs about Evan Chandler, right? Where they think that they think that Evan Chandler approved his son going to Neverland Ranch in order to basically bring these false accusations against Michael Jackson. And there's not a whole ton of evidence about this dude. I'll read it. I'll read some stuff real quick uh, about what's going on here. Yeah, people are saying that he tried to murder his own child and covered up the story. Yeah. So I'll read this real quick. Jordan signs a power of attorney in order to buy a home in Manhattan. June 13th, 05, Michael Jackson is acquitted on all 14 counts. July 7th, 05, Evan beats Jordan, who Jordan was Evan Chandler's son who accused Michael Jackson of molesting him, beat him with a dumbbell, sprayed him with mace, and choked him. And police note a firearm was involved. So it's when you have a guy who's doing stuff to his stuff like that to his kid, just literally torturing him, treating him not even like a human being or like as a living entity in the first place. You can understand why people would think that that guy would also use his son as like basically like a prop or like a stepping stone to get him success in Hollywood. This guy, Evan Chandler, had been chasing success in Hollywood for so long, and he finally gets an opportunity to like get close to Michael Jackson. But instead of, doing that, right? Because it's like what's the game plan there? Instead of, getting close to Michael Jackson and then kind of leveraging him for success, he uses his son to basically garner all this notoriety as being the dad of the guy who Michael Jackson molested, right? In that you got to remember, Michael Jackson was the most famous person in the world at this point in time. So even being like tangentially close to Michael Jackson, even having like these tenuous connections to him would garner you great amounts of success. So that's why people point to this guy in particular and say, "Hey, I don't think Michael Jackson did it." And this is kind of the Dave Chappelle bit, which I'm just going to repeat out loud if you've never heard it before. It's from one of his specials. It's the first Dave Chappelle special I ever watched, and it was fucking hilarious. But he basically said, if you don't molest Macaulay Culkin as a pedophile, right, then you're not really a pedophile. That was basically Macaulay Culkin said Michael Jackson never did anything inappropriate with him at all. And so Dave Chappelle was basically like, if he didn't do anything with Macaulay Culkin, and I'll kind of bring my own words into it, where it's like, if you were in a room alone with Scarlett Johansson, like I don't care who you are, I don't care how loyal you are to your wife, you you might just dip your toes in that pool, just like the little tip of your little piggy into that pool, just to see what the temperature is in there, just to be like, well, would Scarlett Johansson fuck? Like, so for Michael Jackson to not have done anything inappropriate with Macaulay Culkin, as said by Macaulay Culkin, then, and it's not like Michael Jackson's been dead for close to 20, like 15 years now. So 16, technically, if you want to be technical about it. But so it's not like Macaulay Culkin is like fearing, social retribution or like Michael Jackson suing him or what. Michael Jackson's dead. He's been dead for 16 years. So there's no reason for Macaulay Culkin to, continue to lie about not being molested by Michael Jackson. And Michael Jackson, obviously, he was acquitted on the charges when it comes to this kid, Evan Chandler. And so, and I think he was probably acquitted on other charges when it came to other children. And so it's like like I don't know. If you can't, and there was 14 counts against him when it came to this kid, Evan Chandler, or not Evan Chandler, Jordan Chandler. So yeah, it's kind of hard for me to believe that he actually molested those kids when it's just like he's been investigated for it multiple times, right? It's like if you thought your kid was smoking weed and then you went into his room and you didn't smell any weed and you didn't find any weed, you'd be like, okay, maybe this time he just hit it really well. But then if you did it like two or three more times, you'd just be like, I guess my kid's not smoking weed, or he's so good at smoking weed that I can't catch him, right? And that's kind of the comparison I'd come up with for this. And so uh, the non-conspiratorial reason why Evan Chandler would have accused Michael Jackson of molesting his kid. There's a couple reasons. Money. I think he tried to sue Michael Jackson or demanded money out of him. And then also the other reason was to kind of use it as a leverage to get success in Hollywood. You know, even if it's just like getting on Oprah or whatever, being like, yeah, I'm the dad of the kid that Michael Jackson molested. That's that was a very big deal back then. So that would be like the kind of, I guess, non-conspiratorial reason why he would accuse Michael Jackson of molesting his kids and why like the news would run with the story of Michael Jackson being a child molester. The other reason is Michael Jackson was he was very anti-Israel. Michael Jackson didn't he was not a big fan of the state of Israel, and he might be older than Israel. I'll look up his age real quick. So if he died in 2009 at the age of 50, how old would he have been? Dude, let's do some math real quick. So minus 50, that's 59. No. So Michael Jackson was born after Israel was a country, but still, regardless of when he was born, he wasn't a big fan of them. And so people think that the connection between Israel and Hollywood in like just the music industry as a whole and really the entertainment industry as a whole, the connections Israel has to the entertainment industry, they were like, okay, the most famous dude in the world is like speaking out against us or trying to speak out against us. We need to discredit him as a human being. So that's the more conspiratorial reason why Evan Chandler, who was Jewish, I don't know if he ever visited Israel. I'm not going to look too deeply into that, but that would be the conspiratorial reason why people would believe that this guy would falsely accuse Michael Jackson of molesting his kids and why the media and just it kind of became part of the cultural zeitgeist. You know, even now people are like, "Oh yeah, Michael Jackson, the music's great. Can't believe he did it to the kids." Right? Even though he was acquitted on all those charges, right? So it's just odd. It's very odd for him to have been acquitted on the charges once that we know of, and then for people just to continue to be like, "Yep, he did it." Right? And this isn't like an OJ situation. This isn't an OJ situation where it's like they very clearly he very clearly did it. There's no clear evidence that Michael Jackson did this, right? It's these parents, right? It wasn't even the kids. And I understand why. I understand why a kid wouldn't want to go on like the news or whatever and be like, Michael Jackson, fingered my butthole or what. I can under I know why a kid wouldn't want to do that. I understand the necessity of having of having the parents speak for the kids in that scenario, but it's just you never heard it from the horse's mouth really. So that's weird. So yeah, that that's kind of the conspiracy behind why uh the the myth or the idea, I'm not gonna say myth, but the idea that Michael Jackson molested kids, right? That's why it was pushed. It was pushed because Michael Jackson was very anti-Israel. He tried to make a song about Palestine and then he ended up having to rebrand it, and that's that song They Don't Really Care About Us, which I saw an interview recently with Michael Jackson in it from like the early 2000s or whatever. And in the song, Michael Jackson says, Jew me, sue me, meh, 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 meh," and that's like a lyric in the song. He says, Jew me, sue me. And someone was like, isn't that a little bit anti-Semitic, Michael? And this is one of those moments, right, where it's like, you can tell he's lying. You can tell he's like kind of fucking with the person a little bit because he's like kind of smiling a little bit, but he's like, no, no, I'm not anti-Semitic at all. What are you talking about? I was talking about the stereotypes of Jews suing people and how stereotypes could be negative and hurtful and all that stuff. I'm not actually anti-Semitic. You could tell Michael Jackson was hitting a little bit of that. Yeah, I was lying. You know what I mean? It's like when you get in an argument with someone and you're just like, fuck it, yeah, you're right about everything. Who gives a shit? That's kind of what Michael Jackson was doing in this interview. Like, no, no, I can never be. What are you talking about? No, that was let me explain it properly. Yeah, I was actually. It's like when people defend Kanye for being like a Nazi or whatever, and they're like, no, Kanye's actually pointing out, how these stereotypes like ruin people's lives or whatever. It's like, no, he's not. Kanye isn't doing that, dude. He clearly, and maybe he's right, he clearly believes that Jews run the world, and whether he's right or not isn't important, but he believes that for a fact. And people are being like, no, Kanye doesn't actually believe that. This is art, all right? You just don't understand what Kanye's doing. And it's like, no, I do. I understand what Kanye's doing. He's antagonizing them, basically. And that's kind of what Michael Jackson did a similar thing when he said "Jew me, sue me," but Kanye took it a step further and just made that song "Heil Hitler," which song of the summer. If that wasn't banned on Spotify and all that shit, that would have been the song of the summer, dude. It would be not like us. Kanye would be performing at the Super Bowl this year if if that song was not banned on Spotify. That song would be the most popular song on Spotify. It's a banger. But so that's that's kind of the extent of the connection between Michael Jackson and Israel that I know of. And this information it's kind of hard to come by, just because it's like if you Google it, we know who controls the Google searches. You're not going to really find a whole bunch of stuff about it. So that's that's the extent of the connection between him and, Israel and uh his criticizing of the Israeli state. So I was going to talk about that second. I was going to talk about the death theory first, but I guess we're talking about his connections to Israel first and how people, and this kind of does relate to the death theory. People think that he was killed on purpose uh, by, what's the guy's name? Conrad Murray, because uh, they were trying to shut him up. And the other reason why people think he was killed is because when you kill an artist, they become, or when an artist dies, they become so much more popular, right? They essentially become legends, right? Like when an artist dies, Kurt Cobain. I like Nirvana, right? I listen to Nirvana every now and then. Smells Like Teen Spirit, all that bullshit. Something's in the way. Those are good songs, but people talk about Kurt Cobain like he's the greatest musical artist to ever exist, right? And he's good, but he's not that good. But it's because he died so young, right? And he died of like non-natural causes. He basically becomes a legend. Same with Juice World. Juice World made fine music. Sorry, not makes, made. Juice World made fine music. It wasn't great. It wasn't awful. In it, it was for a very specific audience that I was not a part of. But the music was fine, right? He wasn't incredibly popular, but once he died, he became incredibly, incredibly popular. And also, once you die, I'm sure your estate still gets a little bit of that money, right? Like your extended family and stuff, but the majority of that money is going to be going to the record label who like produces the music and all that stuff and like distributes it, right? So that's another reason why people think Michael Jackson was killed as opposed to, dying accidentally. They think he was killed. One reason why the connection to Israel and his criticization, I don't guess criticizing is criticization a word? It should be a word. But his criticizing of Israel, and then Israel was like, all right, we're not dealing with this guy anymore. And then obviously the other reason is the people in the music industry wanted to make a whole bunch of money off Michael Jackson. So they were like, all right, let's just kill this guy, make him a legend, and we'll just get money that way. Because I think touring makes a lot of money, but I don't think the margins are as high on touring, so or as big on touring. So yeah, those are a few reasons why people think Michael Jackson was killed as opposed to this being, accidental manslaughter, which is it's what Conrad Murray, the doctor who killed Michael Jackson, was charged with. And no, Conrad Murray is not one of God's chosen people. Or if you're a black Israelite, then he is, because Conrad Murray was a black dude from the Caribbean. So to read a little bit more about this, so about Michael Jackson's death and why people think it was faked. So Michael Jackson died of acute propofol and benzodiazepine intoxication at age 50 in Los Angeles. So benzodiazepines, that's a depressant, it's a downer. So it's kind of like a fentanyl or like a heroin overdose where you just kind of like and just die, right? It's not like you freak out and your brain explodes or whatever. It's just no, your body slowly shuts down and then you die. And then propofol is I believe it's an anesthetic, or I don't know if anesthetic is the right word, but they use it in surgery to knock you out. And that's why Michael Jackson was taking it. He was using propofol and I guess also these benzodiazepines. It doesn't really specify. Maybe Xanax is Xanax a benzo, but he was using those in order to sleep every night, just because his mind was tortured. Probably because his dad beat the shit out of him as a kid, like horrible, horrific abuse. So maybe that's why he needed this shit to fall asleep. And also just living that life, dude. Living the life Michael Jackson did, your brain is fucking fried, man. Your brain is destroyed living that type of life, you know? You can't go out in public. You can't have normal social interactions with other people. That's like the main thing that makes people go insane, right? Like you look at it, isolation. Michael Jackson was basically isolated from other people. Even though he was surrounded by other people constantly, he couldn't have normal interactions with them. And that's one of the reasons why people say he loved kids so much, is because kids, they don't give a fuck about like fame, or maybe they care a little bit, but they don't care that fucking much, especially back then. They didn't really give a shit. So that's why people think Michael Jackson liked being around kids so much. Or that's one of the reasons. The other reason is his childhood was, he didn't have one. His entire childhood was, he was a commodity. You know, he wasn't treated as a normal kid. And so he didn't really have this normal childhood, or really even a good, enjoyable childhood in any way, shape, or form. So people think he liked having kids around because he wanted to give them the childhood that he never had, and that's why he loved kids so much. So those are a couple of the reasons why people are like, no, it wasn't, there was nothing sexual about it, right? It was just he didn't really have a childhood, and he couldn't have normal social interactions with other people. And so ipso facto, he liked having kids around. You know, they were just, they're pure, right? Like that's the thing about children, is that they're pure. That's why crimes against children are so horrific, is because it's, you're taking the most pure human spirit on the planet and destroying it, essentially. So, yeah, but that's also the reason why Michael Jackson liked having them around, is because they were pure. They didn't, there was no ulterior motive, right? If like a kid's lying to you, you can tell pretty fucking easily, right? Kids are not the best liars. So yeah, these kids weren't lying to him and pretending to be his friends so that they could get famous. And he also enjoyed, you know, giving them the childhood that he never had, if you believe that side of things. So I just want to present both sides of the argument. You know, everyone's heard that he's a pedophile and all that stuff, and that's why he, you know, built that roller coaster. And it's like, but the thing about that, right? The thing, he built like a theme park and like a zoo on his property on Neverland Ranch. The the thing about that is like you don't need to do that. We've seen Jeffrey Epstein, right? We've seen his island and his house and all that stuff. You don't need to build like a theme park and a zoo and all that stuff in order to be a pedophile, right? You don't need to do that stuff. And obviously these pedophiles, they don't care about the fucking children, right? They don't give a shit about them. They don't care if they enjoy themselves. They don't they they hate children essentially, right? They do not care about their happiness or their joy or anything, right? Because if they did, then they wouldn't be pedophiles, right? They'd either kill themselves or just stop doing it, or just not do it in the fucking first place. So it's always weird that people use that as evidence that Michael Jackson was a pedophile, when in reality, to me, it's evidence of the opposite. It's evidence that he really just did want these kids to enjoy themselves and live a happy life that he never got to have when he was a child, right? It's it just doesn't make any sense to me why a pedophile would do that. They don't care about the fucking kids. They don't. None of them do, right? None of them are doing this shit, and so to me, it's just evidence of the opposite. People will be like, he used them to trick them into coming into his house. Michael Jackson didn't need to trick these kids. He didn't need to trick these fucking kids' parents. He could have bought children, right? Like that's the thing about it. Michael Jackson literally had enough money to buy other human beings. He didn't need to fucking trick these kids' parents into, sending them to Neverland Ranch. He didn't need to fucking do that. So why would he? Is kind of my point that I'm getting at here. So. Yeah, he could have bought like some, child trafficking victim from like the Philippines or whatever and just killed the kid when he was done with it and no one would have heard a word about it. So like, why didn't he do that? Why did he build, this theme park and this zoo and all that stuff? Maybe it's because he wasn't actually a pedophile. So, and that's like the majority of the conspiracy theories regarding Michael Jackson. And to me, it's not even a conspiracy theory, man. It's like the accusations have been proven false. He didn't like exhibit any of the signs of like I don't know. I don't know, man. But we're trying to talk about why he faked his death. So the police said he he was killed kind of not on purpose, but like it wasn't like Michael Jackson just died of natural causes. They said Conrad Murray, it was basically medical malpractice from Conrad Murray caused Michael Jackson's death. But some people are like, there's some weird shit going on here. So the first point that we have is that there's a lot of inconsistencies at around when he died. So some people said he was declared dead at the UCLA hospital. Some people say it was like before that, and then there's conflicting reports about whether he was given CPR or not, what time he was given CPR at. Just there's a whole ton of weird inconsistencies regarding his death. Whereas you look at the deaths of some other people, and it's like, or you just watch a TV show and you see the fucking, the EMT checks they're watching goes time of death, 3:15 p.m. or whatever. Or I guess did they use military time? So like 15:15. So there's just a lot of inconsistencies around this high profile death, right? You'd think for a dude like Michael Jackson, they'd be sending their best and their brightest to deal with the situation. You know what I mean? Not people who make mistakes like what time he died and people basically falsely reporting the time that he died and stuff like that. So there's a lot of inconsistencies around that. Another one is that the ambulance photo, that I guess they took a photo in the ambulance and it just looks weird. I'll look it up real quick. But people say it looks very staged. And once again, this happened in Hollywood, UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles. So that it wouldn't be difficult for them to like just throw his body somewhere else and take a picture there and then go to the hospital afterwards. So, um, yeah, a lot of weird stuff going on there. I'll look at the picture myself just to see what's going on here. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the inside of an ambulance looks like. Looks, I don't know, pretty normal to me, I guess. Yeah, let's look at this photo. Original pic used a fake MJ ambulance. Okay, so this is from the Michael Jackson community, which I guess is like a blog or something like that. It- it's one of those pictures where they just put like a red circle around two random things and they're like, look at how fake this picture is. And once again, I don't really believe in this conspiracy theory at all, so it's kind of hard for me to like look at the evidence and then be like, and this is why you need to believe this evidence, but I don't know, do your own do your own sightings afterwards. So, yeah, there's really not a whole lot of stuff here about why he faked his death. I think it's just people not being able to accept the fact that he died just because so many people loved him so much. But yeah, I wanted to keep this thing about an hour long, so I'm just gonna cut it off there. I don't really think there's really no evidence to me that Michael Jackson faked his death. There's a ton of evidence that he was killed. There's a ton of evidence that people smeared his name and stuff like that. So, yeah, don't think he was killed at all. Or don't think that his death was faked. I do think that he was killed by either music executives or Israel or both in order to both silence him and make a fuck ton of money off of him. That's why I think he was killed. And I think the reason that they smeared his name is because they were basically trying to silence him and get people to stop listening to him, but when that didn't work, they decided to kill him. That's what I think about Michael Jackson, in my personal opinion. The, the faking his death thing is, I don't know, just doesn't make any sense to me at all. There's no real connections there. So That's all I've got for this episode. Wasn't a great episode, but hey, fuck it. I'm gonna put it out anyway. Because you know what? I don't give a shit. I don't give a fuck. But to the people who've been listening, we got a new listener or a new couple listeners recently that listened to a episode at least, or maybe part of an episode. So thanks to you guys. Thanks to everyone who listened, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.